Welcome to the Safety and Risk Success podcast with me, Christian Harris. Today, I'm joined by René-Sylvain Bédard of Indominus. René has over 25 years working in the IT security space, and we talk all about cybersecurity. So, to what extent is this a problem? Who does it affect the most in terms of what types and sizes of organizations? What are some of the trends we should be looking out for? And also looking forward into quantum computing, what are some of the reasons where perhaps we could be a bit more optimistic about this than perhaps we might be now? Trust you'll enjoy this because it's a topic that relates to us all. We're all online. We're all doing stuff with our computers. We all need to be safer and more secure in this space. Enjoy the episode. Cheers.
Welcome to the Safety and Risk Success podcast with Christian Harris. We believe that proactive safety and risk management powers business performance. Each week we explore this theme, sharing guests, stories, insights, trends, hints and tips. You can find us on all the major podcasting platforms, and video versions are available on YouTube. But for now, let's join the conversation with Christian.
Thanks for joining me today, René.
Pleasure to be here.
From across the pond. Tell us where you are in the world.
So I'm in beautiful Montreal, part of Canada, eastern seaboard, one of the largest city on the eastern Canada.
Yeah, I've never made it to Canada. My sister-in-law lives in Vancouver, so I will have to go at some point soon.
Yeah, pass through Montreal. You'll have a much better time than just going straight to the West Coast. I mean, after all the French roots are here, so you want to come through here first.
Well, that's a very, very good point. Perhaps I'll have to convince her to meet us there instead. We'll see how we get on with that. Yeah, it's great to have you on the podcast, and we're going to be talking about the world of cyber risk and cybersecurity. I know you've got a kind of interesting backstory where there was a particular incident that kind of inspired you to get involved in this world. Would you start by giving us that?
Sure. So for background, I'm an IT architect. I specialize in Microsoft technologies. And at one point, we were invited by a new customer to come in because they had been victim of a cyber attack. And that's when they became our customer. And basically, here's this guy, in his 40s, and he's on the verge of crying, just like if he had been beaten up. And that's when we realized that, the parallel was exact between bullying and cyber criminals. It's having the power to take away something that's belongs to you and just getting it ripped off by someone who has the power to do so. And this guy was, he was an engineer, was very successful. He had a firm of 20 engineers, was a rising star, and overnight the entire shop shut down. Nobody had access to their email. Nobody could have access to anything, no projects. It was a very rough 48 hours before we, started bringing them back to life. But it took them a month, and it cost them over $500,000. So when you consider that, this is the result of one engineer going click, click on an email that he wasn't supposed to.
Yeah.
And they have the proper tools, but they just weren't configured properly.
So very, very small mistakes can have significant impacts.
Exactly. And the other detail also that I must say is that most business owners don't realize that they're fully liable. If there is a cyber attack, if data is being, exported out of your business, whether it's customer data, employee data, the end liability lies with the owner. And if he has a board, is board. But I mean, it's not the IT guy who's the bad guy for saying, please put in security and nobody listens. It's not his fault at the end. He's not the one who's getting sued. The owner is getting sued.
Yeah, correct. And that's very similar to the world of safety, where much of the audience are going to be working, you can be the head of safety, but fundamentally, it goes down to the directors and the owner of the business who have the ultimate responsibility.
Who signs, right?
Yeah. And so did that, obviously it cost them a lot of money, or that business, that person, a lot of money, but did they manage to kind of
rectify things, or was it just very
So
expensive, or were there more impacts?
so we were able to bring them back online. They've been striving since then, but they've opened our eyes to this entire world, which I mean we were not aware of. And I worked in bank, I worked for Bombardier Aerospace, I worked for Bank of Canada. You know, I've had large environments to work in, and here we have a small medium company making some decent money, but who's just been beat it up into submission. And we came in just on time. They didn't pay the ransom. We actually brought them back online. We were able to recover the data, but it was a month of hell. And here's the worst part. The double click happened on the 30th of October. The attack happened on December 1st. So they took all that time. They took out their accounting system database. They took out, they were able to see in their report how much money they had in their bank account. They even took the time to delete the backups that were online.
Wow.
So
it's a very professional outfit.
Yeah, well, it's having the power and deciding to use it for your own benefit and not for the greater good.
So is this, obviously anybody joining us on this episode who's senior in any organization is going to be thinking, oh, well, this could happen to me. Is it something that is more common among a sort of smaller organization because there's a perceived or a real lack of defenses versus, let's say, going after a massive whale of an organization where my perception as somebody that doesn't really know about this would be that they should be well protected?
So it's two different approaches. So when you look at the stats for Europe, 86% of attacks were targeted for small and medium businesses. So it's a fact. If you open any newspaper in Europe, at least once a day, there's a small city, a village, or some small government authority that is getting, hammered. Larger companies will be more into the targeted cyber attacks, meaning that they will actually take the time to study the company, study the stock, see what's coming, what in terms of future announcements or something that should bring the stock up. And they would actually turn around and plan and implement little steps so that by the time this event comes in, they can attack, they can make a maximum splash, and they can even go up to shorting the stock and making sure that the stock go down. And, that entire concept of, it's called extortion economics is to another level. You have all your basic stuff where, ransomware and malware and, getting a little piece of money here and there. This is major money. And it's mainly what made the dark web the third largest worldwide economics. They're right behind China. It's insane.
I was staggered when you told me that when we had a chat a couple of weeks ago to prepare for this, because that just didn't. I never would have expected that. I mean, I knew it was big, but I never would have expected it to be as big as that.
And they now have equivalent power of R&D of some of the largest IT societies in the world. So they can now develop new ways of doing things. They can actually put them for lease for anybody to come in and just, grab a ransomware as a service.
Yeah. So you've given two scenarios there. One is a kind of I guess a spray and pray type thing where they're putting out stuff and just hoping that somebody makes a mistake.
I call it fishing with dynamite.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, that's a good one. And then there's the more focused attempts at these larger organizations.
More of a sniper,
The sniper, yeah. Perhaps we shouldn't be talking about snipers at the moment with everything that's been going on in the news. We're recording this just a few days after the Trump incident.
We apologize to the Trump family that wasn't targeted.
No, it's fine. But has it always been the case that there's been that split, and has it always been that it's been kind of predominantly on the smaller side of things that there's been more traction, or is that something that's been developing over time? I guess because if so, because the dark web's been growing and more people are getting involved.
The so first, let's take a step back maybe and just explain what are the types of cyber criminals. There's really two big family. One of them is, the criminal gang type, where they actually have a system and they have something and they exploit it and they will hit anybody for it and everybody for it to make money. And then there are I call them country backed. So there's a bunch of cyber terrorist groups out there that are actually backed by authoritarian regime. So basically, China, Iran, Russia, North Korea, they're making a lot of money by actually attacking other country. And as we've seen in Russia, they're also using it to disrupt systems in Ukraine and exact revenge on those that helped the Ukrainians. So those two families have different agendas, but similar results. As far as the small, medium businesses, it's a matter of understanding and attention. So I learned not too long ago that 92% of CEOs are non-technology centric. It's not their specialty. They don't know about it. They don't necessarily want to know about it. So it's low in their priority. If you have someone who's had a furniture shop for 20 years, he's very good. He knows the entire process to make furniture. If you ask him about his security on his desktop, that might not be his forte.
Yeah.
So what happens is that the common belief is that cybersecurity costs a lot of money. And yes, if you ask somebody to come in and say, here's my 20 years of history and please secure everything, the checks will go wild. But I have a different approach. I have more of let's call it a sensible approach. The first step I do in my process is actually get to know your data and figure out what's actually sensitive. What do you need for your business to keep on going? What's the data that has to be protected at all cost? And from there, what are the technologies you're already probably paying for that can be used to actually make this security better? And those two together can already make, they can probably stop 70 or 80% of all attack. Then it's just little increments to get to that 90, 95% zone.
Yeah.
Risk zero doesn't exist. So if somebody tells you they'll get you 100%, run the opposite direction.
Yeah.
Because no, that doesn't exist. But the idea is, if you can see them coming, you can isolate the device. You can turn around and you can actually choose to say, no, this thing is going down. We're not touching it. Or we're isolating this device so that it doesn't infect the others. You have room. You have time to react. If you don't see anything coming, you end up a month later and payload's been, dropped onto your business and you can't do anything anymore. But it's not about the budget. It's really about the attention you put to it. If you put attention to it, I'm a former CGI employee. Whatever gets measured gets improved. So if you actually start to measure your cybersecurity and how are your staff doing with training and stuff like that, you start to have a real good sense of what's happening in your business.
So in health and safety, there's a Swiss cheese analogy, which is about the fact that, every layer of defense has a hole in it somewhere, because, as you say, 100% protection or 0% incidence is not realistically feasible. So is this similar in that you're just trying to put layer upon layer of Swiss cheese in as much protection as you can, and none of those are going to be 100%, but obviously if you put all those together, then they multiply up and produce something very strong.
It's a very great analogy. I will actually borrow you that one and reuse it later. But yes, definitely. And also, there's now a direction sense that wasn't there before. So we used to say, you have a firewall in front of your main office, you're safe because you're trusting the firewall and nothing can come in. Most attacks now come from inside. Not because employees are more, cyber criminals than they were before, but it's actually because when you double click on an email, you're within the network, you're on the perimeter, you're within the office. So that email will start executing from within the office and will go out to check on the dark web, download tools here and there, send an email there. It's going to start replicating itself within your environment. So the firewall alone is no longer sufficient. And when you talk about, adding layers, we're looking at things like, okay, making sure that the data can actually defend itself. Is the identity secure? Is the device secure? Is Microsoft 365, if that's your provider, is it secured? And will it stop outgoing email to the dark web? Will it stop, incoming malware attacks, scripts from coming in the first place? So all those are layers that are just adding on to the next one.
Mm-hmm. And I'm assuming that, the development of the methods that are used to produce these attacks is kind of exponentially increasing and improving and getting stronger, and so therefore it becomes harder and harder, and we have to boost our defenses kind of exponentially as well. Is that correct?
It's not only correct, it's actually scary. I guess just like in safety, like everybody everywhere else, you've seen the advent of AI and large language models. So we can now have a perfect replica of for example, a DocuSign email that will not have any mistakes in it, that will be fully corrected, fully right to the right name, but it's going to come from an address in Japan or an address in China or a free email somewhere like Hotmail. So you can no longer say, oh, this email is full of typo. Of course, it's not the real thing. It's not enough anymore. So we have to become even more acute. And to this, I will add the following. I think it was 2 or 3 weeks ago, I heard some futurist, analysts saying, we believe AI will have an IQ of 1,500 by the same time next year. So the bad guys can use the same AI you're using.
Yeah.
So when we tested, what was it? It was in February this year. In a lab, they created a malware called Black Mamba. And it was basically a malware that will morph and bypass EDR. EDR being endpoint detection and response, which is our main tool that analyze the reaction of scripts and stuff like that to make sure that it's not harmful to your computer or your environment.
Okay. They
were able to build this in a lab. So what are they building on the other side of the dark web? They have access to the same tools. So it is worrisome at best.
Yeah. What proportion of organizations are well equipped to protect themselves? What proportion are kind of middling or on the way, and what proportion are sort of woefully inadequately protected? Yeah. Would you say, based on your experience?
If I base myself on statistics here in Canada, I would probably say that 10 to 12% are well equipped. Another 15 to 18% are on the way, and the rest are not there, basically. And to that, I'll include, not that I want to speak against my colleagues, but some MSPs. So there are some managed service providers out there that say, yeah, we'll make sure your systems stay up, and if there's ransomware, we'll be able to get you back within a few hours. Yes, but your data is going to be on the dark web for sale, and they don't look at that portion. They don't have that visibility. We went through a university, and we did some research for them on the dark web, and we figured out that the CISO and the CEO's account were not available on dark web, which was a great news. And we figured out that their assistant's password was actually being uploaded every month. She has access to everything.
Yeah.
So you can't say, oh, I'll log in from my own computer where my kids are playing and it's going to be fine. I don't need protection at home. No. if you log in and if there's a listener there, guess what? That password is compromised, as well as your bank password, as well as your Netflix password, whatever you type in.
Mm-hmm.
They'll just send a nice text file with all of the passwords you've used this month.
Yeah.
And put that for sale.
It is scary, isn't it?
The more you dig and the more you realize, I mean, that's why I wrote the book. That's why we built Spartan Guard is to make sure that we can actually prevent instead of, come in too late and have to pick up the pieces.
Yeah.
The one of the thing that broke my heart when we did this incident response is that everything that happened there was preventable. And we saw how it could have been prevented. I mean, you needed an ADR on the devices. You needed some smart filtering. You shouldn't have had servers on site. And we put that in place afterward. But the idea is that they already had a firewall. They had an antivirus. They had backup. But none of that mattered at the end because everything was crap. Because the guy took a month, looked around, found all the weaknesses. Oh, a password in Chrome. Isn't that fun? Oh, it's the password that opens the backup. And at the end of the day, all that could have been avoided. And so that's why we strive to actually make the CEOs conscious of cybersecurity and to turn them into the best cyber defenders they can be for their business.
Yeah,
because it has to start with them. At the end of the day, they'll be the ones signing the checks if such an event occurs.
Yeah. And is that then the biggest blocker? You kind of mentioned that now a couple of times, that it's kind of the business leader, the CEO. If they're not aware of this or kind of on board with this, then it doesn't really happen. And is that kind of what's the root cause of the 70% roughly of firms that you say are kind of underprepared or underprotected?
It feels like selling life insurance. This concept that, somebody dies in the family, so the entire family goes out and buys life insurance.
Yeah.
It feels that way. It's like you're saying, okay, let's prevent cyber. Yeah, but I haven't been attacked. We won't be attacked. We're too small to be attacked. Excuse me, do you have money in your bank account? That's what they're after. Your size won't matter. It's how much money you have in the bank. Yeah, but they don't know how much money they have in the bank. Well, they can find out very quickly if they're inside your network, So that's, for us, it's an issue.
And is that then why you took the decision to write the book? I'm always interested in hearing about people that have written books. I'm trying to finish my own book at the moment to try and raise awareness among that group of people. Is that the kind of idea?
And that's exactly why, we wrote Secure by Design. We started by creating the actual method. So the method is secure, and that means survey, educate, construct, unify, review, and evolve. That allows you to, as an owner, to actually take the pulse. What's your data? What's the land you're building on? Educate yourself, your management team, and your staff, and in that order, not the other way around. Because at the end of the day, people like to get inspired to do something and not feel like they're doing it just for a checkbox, So if you as an owner go forward and actually get trained, the rest of the people will follow. Build the defenses. So that's the construct phase. And then you need to integrate all those defenses into process, people, and technology. That's when you come in and you actually unify everything. Review it is basically control review, being able to do intrusion testing on a yearly basis, do fire drills. If a cybersecurity event, are you ready?
Yeah.
And then evolve is actually looking out the window every now and then and seeing what's coming, technology-wise, that can actually shake the foundations of your plan. So Secure by Design is a guide for leaders to leave cybercriminals outside of their business. Right? We want to leave them out of there. So we want to accompany them into making this happen.
Are there certain things? I'm going to give another analogy because I love analogies. So we have on our in London, there's a security company called Banham who do burglar alarms and security and all of that sort of stuff. So when we did our house up, and our house looks very pretty, it's probably the prettiest house on the street. We decided we're going to get this Banham thing, A, for the security of having the alarm and the call out service and so on, and B, as a bit of a deterrent, because if you've got that sign on the wall, it's clear that you've got some protection, and therefore people are going to maybe find an easier target. Are there sort of things like that where there are certain signs that if you are taking this kind of right approach, it's kind of clear that you're not an easier target, and that's going to put a lot of people off to be preventative, as you've spoken about.
Yeah, and it's funny that you use the Alarm Central, because we're using that throughout the book. So a good example that I give is an EDR is like a smoke detector on your device. So if ever there is a smoke signal on one of the devices, there needs to be an Alarm Central at the other end. That would be your information error management and correlation system, your SIEM, that will actually collect this and be able to automatically isolate the device. But all of those points, the firewall that, watch the gate, at the entry of your lot, and so on and so forth. So there are layers like that of security to be done. But you can put all the security in the world. If you leave the front door open and don't put the alarm system on,
yeah,
they will just walk into the house and take what they want. So yeah, there needs to be that consciousness awareness raising that needs to happen.
Yeah, that makes sense. Going back to the method, which I really like, having a clearly defined method. The last point, evolve. I mean, what trends are there? You mentioned AI. What other sort of trends are there that are coming on the horizon that you're looking out for or preparing for, or we should be sort of thinking about?
So the two largest ones I'm looking for right now is AI is one of them, and more effectively, or even it's going to get actually a lot worse before it gets better, is when quantum kicks in. So quantum computing has this unique ability to be able to read our current encryption system within minutes. So our current encryption system is actually based on today's computer, let's call them that way. And when we go into quantum, then suddenly all those encryption systems are no longer proven solid, let's call them that way. So we need to start planning for what they call quantum resistant encryption. I'm not saying you need to implement this now, but you need to have eyesights and actually know what's currently encrypted with what, and how will this need to evolve when quantum kicks in. That's one of the reasons, by the way, why personally I didn't invest in Bitcoins.
Right.
Because I knew that the encryption was actually based on today's silicon. Tomorrow, it could all be decrypted, and then it would be worthless. And I agree, if I had been the guy receiving 20 Bitcoins for a pizza, I would be very happy today. But the point is, there is a risk there, and that's the risk that I've identified for this.
Yeah.
And quantum will basically shift balance of power. At the same time, for me, quantum is the hope, because if you can decrypt all of my secret, I can also decrypt all of yours, which means that the dark web will no longer be a safe place to hide, because encryption could be decrypted, communication could be decrypted, and so on and so forth. So I am hopeful, and I set out the vision for Indominus managed security, that we would see the end of cybercriminality within the next decade. That to me is the wish. And should that happen, and should I actually participate in that like I think I am, I'll be happy to quote Tony Stark, make baby bottles,
It's interesting because I hadn't thought about that. The fact that actually, yeah, the if the technology can develop in such a way that you could almost eradicate the dark web and therefore, dramatically lessen the risk. That's really interesting. And yeah, something I'd never even considered.
Yeah, well, in our case, it also became a rally cry because we no longer see our competitors as enemies.
Hmm.
We see them as partners to making this happen.
Yeah,
So it changes the entire dynamic. It changes how we talk to them. It changes how we talk to security engineers that we know of, how we talk to the authorities. We're all working with that concept. I
hmm.
have an hashtag that I pepper everywhere called "Stop the Bully," you know, and that's the goal. The goal is to stop them from bullying small medium businesses.
Yeah,
And we don't go for enterprise accounts because, I mean, as we're providing smoke detectors and alarm central, they already have the firemen and the
yeah,
sprinklers and everything in between. They don't need
yeah,
us.
yeah. And I guess the larger organizations, although they could still be vulnerable, yeah, they're going to be further down the line, and you probably don't need to convince the leadership they need to do something. It's just a question of the extent to which they do it.
And they
Whereas,
hire
yeah,
most of the talent. There's 4
yeah,
million available position in cybersecurity today across the world. If you look for those that are here, well, they work in bank, they work in government, they work in large enterprise. They don't work for SMBs.
hmm,
Or
yeah.
do you call them SMEs in English?
SMEs, yeah, SME, yeah,
SMEs. Yeah, apologize.
small medium enterprise, yeah, yeah,
So
um,
yeah,
yeah. Um, so you're going to put yourself out of business as well then in a few years,
I wish. Please help me.
like Elon Musk with electric vehicles and stuff, you know.
Yeah.
Um,
The
but
idea is to prevent, and if we can
yeah,
prevent enough, they wouldn't go. They wouldn't have anywhere to go anymore. So that would be a great day.
that would be good. And that's a nice mission to be on as well because it means you are going after something that is a game worth playing, a fight worth fighting, an
Yep.
achievement worth achieving. Yeah,
It's it's defending those that can't defend themselves,
yeah.
and I
No,
think it's one of the noblest mission.
yeah. No, I love that. That's great. So for anybody that's joined us then on this episode and would like to get involved in that mission, learn more, um, start to think about this more carefully, because what you're saying to me is at the moment you still need to be doing a lot. Hopefully in the future, this risk might be mitigated significantly, but at the moment it isn't, and it's only going to get worse between now and
Exactly.
then. So, what would you encourage people to do as kind of next steps to go on the journey with you?
So the easiest way is to find me on LinkedIn. First, because as you might think, there's not a million René-Sylvain Bédard in the world. So that's the easiest way to find me. You can still Google my name, you'll find me anyway. But the idea is that through my LinkedIn, you have access to all my articles. You can actually reach me directly. I'll be happy to respond. And also you get the advantage of being able to try our scorecard, try our tests, figure out where you're located in the spectrum, and from there we can actually assist you, and we'll be happy to help.
Perfect. And the book, I guess the book's available on Amazon, is it, around the world?
It's not there yet. It's currently being edited. We're in the final steps of editing. It's going to be available in French and in English. Should be later August or beginning of September.
August, September. Okay, perfect. This
But it will be
episode
on Amazon.
is
Yes.
yeah, this episode's going to be going out probably around that kind of time. So although we're recording it slightly earlier, well,
And
actually no,
my
it might come out a bit sooner than that. To be fair.
and my editor is Rethink Press from London.
Oh, fantastic! Yeah, I know those guys a bit through because we have Dent in common, don't we? Daniel Priestley and
We do.
Dent. So yeah, which is a great organisation.
Agree.
Great. Well, wish you all the best with the book. Congratulations on doing that and getting that out there, and on the great work you're doing. And really enjoyed learning a bit more about this topic, which I think you've left me on the one hand feeling positive about the long term, and on the other hand thinking I need to have a word with my IT company to just double check what we're doing in the short term.
Exactly. Yep.
But that's the idea, right? We've got the prompting people to do some action and be preventative. So
Exactly.
so
Yep.
yeah. So thanks very much. Thanks for sharing your insights, and thank you for joining Renee and I on this episode. And we'll see you again for another one soon. Cheers.
Cool. Thanks a lot. Bye.
Thanks for joining us on the Safety and Risk Success podcast. If you've enjoyed this episode, please hit follow and do share on social media. Does anyone you know spring to mind as a great guest, even yourself? If so, please contact us on podcast@slipsafety.co.uk. See you next week for another episode.